British Army has been beating up on the Americans, although remember the Americans did get those couple of great battle wins at the end in December, right around Christmas Day in 1776. Well, the British decide it's springtime's coming, summer's coming, they decide to push forward. Now the British are kind of slow about this. It takes them a while to get troops there, but they decide that they really want to push towards Philadelphia, take over the capital at this time. Philadelphia was the capital, and really want to get things ready. So they start pushing. Washington's army does as best he can to hold them off, but the British troops are pushing forward. This is when, at the end of this year, that they settle in Valley Forge. They settle in Valley Forge for the winter. This is one of the darkest, hardest times for the war. They don't have supplies. They don't have adequate clothing. They don't have adequate accommodations. People are getting sick. People are dying from the cold. They're dying from hunger and disease. Really one of the hardest moments of the war, hands down, is getting them through Valley Forge. This is just the crunch time for Americans to see if they really have the spirit that it takes to get through this. Now, during this time, Thomas Paine wrote his pamphlet called The Crisis. Remember, he was the one who wrote Common Sense, we read some of in the last packet. He wrote The Crisis, that was really trying to urge American forward, to keep the faith, to feel like they were on God's side, and God was going to help them through this trial. As part of this lesson, we're going to read part of that document that you should know, a very famous document that was meant to try to instill some hope into this dark, dark time. Also, another thing happens during this time in Valley Forge. While they're there, Baron von Steuben comes to the camp. Now, Baron von Steuben, I have a hard time saying that, is a Prussian officer. He's a military drill master. He comes in, George Washington brings him in and says, whip my troops into shape. So they spend the winter drilling over and over again. Baron von Steuben was kind of known to be a very gruff guy. He was the quintessential drill master, the yell in your face type of guy. George Washington turns his troops over to him. He originally gets a group of great men, I think 100 of them or so, teaches them all the drills, teaches them what to do, and then sends them out to the army and has them drill everybody else. There's some funny stories about it. George Washington, very particular, very stern man. He wanted to keep upright moral conditions in his army. He would not allow any swearing. George Washington was very clear that his troops would use good language. However, Baron von Steuben comes in, and he knows if you're going to get up in the face and yell, sometimes you got to use some really rough words. And so he, yell out all sorts of profanities. Now, he didn't know English very well, so he didn't do it in English, but he would call his translators over and tell his translators, hey, start swearing at them, use bad language, and get these guys going. So, and George Washington kind of let it happen. I think he realized that these troops really needed to get whooped into shape. So Baron von Steuben comes and really drills them, and really after Valley Forge, the troops that come out of this come out of it with a very strong loyalty, very good skills, because of what they had to go through. Not only were the winter conditions bad, but they were drilled and hard, and as they came out in the spring, they were a brand new fighting force that was ready to push forward and do some greater things than they had before. So Valley Forge, very hard time, a time when their faith was tested, but also that they were very much strengthened. The famous painting that you often see of this is George Washington kneeling next to his horse praying. That's from the Valley Forge era, where he goes out and people say that he heard him pray that, they needed God's help in this type of, in this endeavor. So that's become kind of a famous moment in U.S. history. So Valley Forge really kind of forged the American troops. Very dark, hard time, but got them ready to really push forward and come out conquerors through the rest of the Revolutionary War.